This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We have the distinct pleasure to have a longtime friend here with us in the mobile studio, John Osborne. Thanks for taking the time here at CS, the craziness of the show, to come spend some time with us.
It's great to be here. I'm glad I wore my tennis shoes and not my dress shoes.
Yeah, and I've got my boots on. I've done the whole show in my boots. John and I've known each other, I don't know how many years. I was at HP. You were at Kroger at the time.
Yeah, I think it's close to 10 years now,
yeah,
if not more.
Yeah. So if you want to know the history of John and I and our work together when I was at HP and he was at Kroger, there's actually a chapter in my book on John and the work that he was doing as the innovation leader at Kroger. You're off doing other things now. And actually some of the work you did at Kroger around the early days of IoT devices and Zigbee networking for IoT monitoring, in the development of some of the IoT devices at Kroger, like temperature monitoring of the cases. The result was very innovative. We were just laughing before we started, before the show started, around, everybody's running around the show going, wow, this new great thing. And we're like, it's not really new. We've only been talking about this for like 10 years. It's just now being able to make it real.
Now, finally starting to be deployed. I still talk to the guys at Kroger, and they are rolling this and other solutions out to all the stores. So it took them a while to get there.
Well, it's always the problem with any innovation. It's innovation at scale is hard.
Very difficult.
It's very difficult. So through that time, though, you've been chairman at the Zigbee Alliance for quite some time now.
Fifth year coming up, I believe.
Fifth year is the chairman. Give a little, just for those of on our show, some people are not technical from background, so give kind of the 2-minute, what is Zigbee?
Sure. So Zigbee is one of the original machine-to-machine protocols. So low power, long battery life, that you can take a small device, a sensor, put it somewhere in your house, and it will talk to a mesh network, and you don't have to touch it for many, many years, for hopefully. And that's why Kroger did what we did, because the sensors were sealed. They had to be for health reasons, and the battery life was well over, I think, 10 years. So this is something that has evolved over time to be one of the premier mesh networks in the industry. As we've grown, we're now talking to other organizations about how do we help the industry, whether it's smart home, commercial building, new things that are coming, well, things that you and I've talked about for years that have been now suddenly popping up here at CES are health and wellness. How do we take care of our elderly family at home?
Right.
What about connected cars? Well, we kind of thought about that a few years ago. So all of this low power technology is really starting to come to a forefront. And if we can get the industry to actually work together, as I said, you kind of check your weapons at the door and let's shake hands and see if we can't raise kind of the common ground for everybody so that consumers win, because they can go to any big box retailer or Amazon and buy a device that they want for their home and just plug it in and let it work. They don't have to worry about looking at the box and trying to figure out, of the 15 icons on there, what network does it play with and what device does it talk to. So we're trying to simplify the industry. So we just started off with just 2 devices talking to each other, and then other devices talking to each other, get a small network. Now we're trying to evolve that into, how do we get that into the cloud with a common data model? How do we address all of the common, shouldn't be common, deal with security issues?
Right.
Everyone has a slightly different way of dealing with it. So if we can get these industry organizations and leaders to agree, kind of head down the same path, that's when I think the industry really takes off.
Well, it's interesting when you look at any kind of path of a new innovation, right? So if you think about IoT, was 3 or 4 years ago, there was just this whole plethora of IoT associations. Qualcomm stood up their own one, and Intel had their own version one. And then you got the Google Nest guys had their own one. And then you had the protocol guys, whether it's Zigbee or Z-Wave or everybody else. And then there was this. So now you're seeing some level of consolidation of those organizations like OCF, but you still get these islands, right? Where everybody's like, I'm doing
I'm
my
better
thing,
than
and
you.
you're the enemy, because if you win a manufacturer to your stuff, they're not using my stuff. When in reality, the consumer doesn't want to know. Okay, is your house going to be a pure Zigbee house, so therefore you can only buy sensors that run Zigbee, or are you a pure Wi-Fi house, or a pure whatever? And to be quite honest, if you have a house today that has IoT devices in it, like light bulbs, light switches, or whatever, you probably already are a federation of multiples of these already
Absolutely.
hidden behind the scenes. And it was interesting because, like, before we started the show, you were sharing, a little bit of an update about how do you bring all of these players who typically won't even go have a beer with each other to actually play nice and have a different kind of a conversation. How do you make that happen?
A lot of planning, a lot of cajoling, and we have a small team within the Zigbee organization that started reaching out to industry leaders. Like yourself, you had network connections. You referred us to a few folks. We have 400 member companies that know and are part of other organizations. So we just started making phone calls. We said, we're going to have a little retreat for 4 or 5 days off in the hills of California. No cell phones, no laptops. We're going to feed you. We're going to buy you some beer, and we'll have a conversation. Locked them in a room, and after 3 or 4 days, we actually got people to agree that working together was a good thing. So they said, can we do this again next year? So we did it next year, and then we started doing every quarter. Now we moved it over to, we do it in Asia, we do it in North America, we just finished one in Europe, and now we're getting things coming out of these meetings where we continue to facilitate, but we let some of these companies start to lead. So one of the big ones that came out last year, Amazon stood up and said, we're going to put a smart hub in Alexa, and it's going to be Zigbee. And we're going to work with everyone to say, can we do a works with all hubs type of program? And that kind of solidified the room, solidified the industry. We started seeing more people going, finally, instead of creating yet another standard, they've picked one that, the big three really in my mind, Zigbee, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, it's all in that box.
Right.
So it covers the house like you were talking about. So now we're starting to see other big players starting to raise their hand and go, can we use other application layers, whether it's OCF, whether it's dot, start consolidating underneath of those folks. So we have those type of conversations going on right now. Fortunately, I can't really talk about them. We would love to, but the lawyers go, please don't do that. So we have board of directors that we have to deal with. When you talk about the Zigbee board, it's soon to be 16, almost 17, and I think we'll have a 17th one in another quarter. And trying to get those number of people to talk to another board of 12 to 13 people and get everyone to agree, a lot of politics, a lot of phone calls. But you know what? We're getting it done.
What is this? How does this translate into what consumers are going to see?
Well, it'll take, in my mind, I think it'll take a couple of years. But what will happen is we will agree on common APIs, common data models, common security, so that we don't have to layer multiple layers of solutions on top of solutions to make things secure. Because all it's doing is making things complex. You want the right security because the consumer wants easy commissioning. The businesses want hard, tight, it's going to be so tough, you can't make it work. So somewhere we meet in the middle, and that dial is going to go back and forth. So we have a couple of companies, especially in the security side, are leading those initiatives. There's actually a group here meeting right now. I think it's at the ice rink. One of the big guys in the industry, I think, owns that team, and he's offered up the facilities, and they're hosting a whole day of everyone sitting around and hashing out the details. And it'll probably take 24 months to really get that taken care of. Common data models, common cloud solutions, so that if you want to move from one to the other, you can. Because we're also seeing in the industry, new buildings and remodels are being retrofitted with a solution. Right? So someone buys the house, it's built, it's done. Here's your remote control. Here's your whatever. But if you want to add to it, go to the big box or go to Amazon or wherever. buy the device you want. Don't worry about all the specifications. We want to make sure it works.
Right.
So it's going to be a few years before we get there, but we're enabling everyone to get to that point.
Yep. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with John Osborne, talking about Zigbee, the IoT world, what's going to be the impact on consumers' lives, and I'm sure John and I will also dig deep on innovation on a broader scale and broader discussion and the challenges of bringing new ideas and new innovations to market, IoT being the one that we both have been very passionate about over the last decade or so. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick break. You're listening to Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Welcome back to Innovations. Continue our conversation with John Osborne. So, John, as we were talking right when we went into the break in the last segment, we were talking about the experience to consumers. The challenge today for consumers going into a big box retailer is they're going to buy a lock or a smart switch for light bulbs or whatever, is they're playing systems integrator, right? Trying to make it all work. And part of, and look, we're active, as you know, very active in OCF. And part of this is, well, how do the consumer goes in and sees 20 things on the shelf. Not all of them are going to be aligned with what you guys are doing or aligned with OCF or aligned with anybody else in this space. How does the consumer going to know that what they're buying is a device that does have some kind of security embedded in it and know that it's going to work with the hub or whatever the case might be? So is there going to be some kind of a branding strategy here or some kind of a, Those are exactly the kind of things we're talking about. Okay.
We want to reduce the chiclets on all the boxes and all the fine print. So we have, and I'll give a nice throw out to Mitch at the Zigbee Alliance. They're talking about maybe we do another organization, and we agreed and run those standards through there. Now, the challenge for that is how many organizations, companies want to join yet another organization.
Right.
That's time, money, and resources to do that. But at least the vision's there. Mm-hmm. So if we can consolidate down to whether, much like Wi-Fi, you see the Wi-Fi logo, you know it's going to connect to a Wi-Fi system. So we do have to boil that down. Don't know how we're going to deal with it, but it's got to be, in my mind, a common logo that says IoT ready or something like that.
Right. So today, if because you're talking about, these kinds of things always take time. Right? They don't happen overnight. So if a consumer today wanted to put a device in their home and they walk into, a home improvement store, what do they do today?
Well, today they're going to pull up a bunch of boxes and they start looking at it. And they're going to call the attendant over who might be able to help them. And usually they're not educated enough to talk about all of the devices. So what I think you're starting to see things like works with Alexa or Google Home. So those are starting to kind of maybe become the big iconographies that people will recognize and say, if it works with that, I have a high level of confidence it will work in my home. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Amazon kind of set the stage a year and a half ago when they said, here's the 3 big things we're going to do. Here's how we're going to run the program that you can come and certify your device with us. We'll put our works with Amazon Alexa on your webpage or on our webpage as you sell it through Amazon, because that's really what they want to do. They're enabling people to understand that it's just centered around that little box in the house.
Right.
So that may be the path that we go down, and we do have some of these big name companies are members, and they are driving a lot of this.
Right. Yeah, and it is like it's amazing how many calls I get from friends and family. Like, I need to put a smart lock on the front of my house because I'm using it as an Airbnb or something. Right. And I want to, so I can remotely change door codes, those types of things. Which one should I buy?
Yeah, and
you get really nervous about making any kind of a recommendation.
You suddenly become liable.
Yeah.
I think this is where the industry is starting to figure out that they need to grow. Right. It used to be everything was inside the house. It was connected. You had maybe a local remote control or an app or whatever. Now, as you are trying to take care of your family, Airbnb model, unlock the door from 3,000 miles away, the cloud becomes extremely important. Yep. Now the internet connectivity becomes extremely important. wrap security around that. Extremely important. So we've evolved the community and the technology to where, say, someone like Zigbee doesn't want to get involved with the cloud. We're just not experts in that, don't want to be experts in that. Some of our member companies might be, but someone like an OCF is probably the right folks to reach out to and go, hey, could we maybe work together on this?
Right.
So that we can get it to market faster.
Right.
So those are the things that we would like to accomplish.
Right.
And are working on.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it on the head talking about how, each of us in each of these associations, we could all draw battle lines. And all it does is it just slows down the entire process. And the fact of the matter is, the fundamental inside pieces of an IoT device are pretty standardized, right? It's pretty commoditized. It's not like it's what do you do with it that really creates the differentiation. So why fight on that piece of it, free up those dollars in order to innovate and add the value add on top of, rather than worrying about the where rubber meets the road type of a thing.
And there are companies out there like a Leaderson.
Mm-hmm.
So Leaderson is a very large global organization, company that family owned. No one really knows about who they are. They started in lighting. They manufactured light bulbs. Then they started manufacturing connected light bulbs. So the step from one to the other to, say, connected devices for sensors wasn't that big of a deal. So we see a lot of people coming to folks like Leaderson and saying, I need a solution that does this. Can you handle that? So not only do they do the manufacturing, they have thousands of engineers, they have offices all over the world, and they do a lot of white labeling for big brand names, and I won't mention any of those. But they're becoming kind of the innovative center for these things. So small companies can come in and say, I've got a great idea. Can you help me build this and plug it into a solution? And because they are an ODM, they're having to maintain all of these different technologies and protocols and everything else. So they have the expertise already to say, yes, we can do that for you. Tell us what shape, size, color, battery life do you need. Or green energy now is starting to really take off. No batteries at all. And these are the kind of folks that will help facilitate, enable, and grow the industry, and let the people who have the idea just kind of come in and say, can you help me do this? That way they don't have to go and build the full infrastructure and an application team and everything else.
But that's important because you and I talk to and engage with a lot of young innovators with great ideas, but they don't know about these kinds of organizations to partner with because they're always behind the scenes. For me, whether it's somebody's coming up with a new mobile phone, making the introduction to a Foxconn or a Compal, or the ODMs for, the consumer electronics side of it, which is where my expertise is, or people coming to you saying, I got an IoT device, who's the ODM I go partner with? And I think that's where someone with an idea can have huge acceleration effect if they know who to go talk to. And at what point do you talk to them?
Yes.
Don't go talk to them when you got the idea in the back of a napkin. You got to do some work before you're going to get the support. Because the ODM is actually, in many cases, pseudo-investing time and resources to get behind an entrepreneur's new ideas. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. But I'm going to ask John to think about it over the commercial break, talk a little bit about innovating at scale, both at an industry level, but you also and I both have a lot of experience at innovating at scale within large organizations and dealing with the antibodies. And I always like to have a conversation on that. So we get back, we'll continue the conversation with John Osborne. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Hey, John, gave you a little challenge as we went to the commercial break. You and I have, over the decade, have had a lot of conversations on innovating inside of large organizations. And you and I both now deal a lot with innovating across organizations and in entire industries. You with Zigbee, me with my role at Cable Labs. And one of the common things you and I have talked about many times over the years is the challenges of dealing with the innovation antibodies, the people on the sidelines who are, throwing the rocks at you saying, oh, that'll never work. And you just fought that battle with the Zigbee Alliance. Well, I shouldn't say Zigbee Alliance, but bringing the IoT, because battle lines get drawn and everybody's got their view. And give me a little insight on your take on the innovation antibodies and the challenges you've experienced over your years as an innovation leader.
There have been several challenges from I deal with large customers today, and they have the same problems. It's great to sit down with them and share where my experience has been and how to help them kind of get it over themselves internally. But some of what we find is we get new folks that come in, whether they're new directors or they're new engineers as part of the design team. Everyone has a great idea. Someone wants to push their agenda, or they want to make sure that they're the first there. They want to get the credit for something, or they're just not quite ready for the industry. You got to keep pushing it, even though you are going to get mud thrown at you, like you said. But sometimes you have to kind of give them the mantle and say, all right, run with it. I'm making you part of the problem. If you think this is better, then let's run with it for a couple of weeks and see how far we get. By making them part of that process, and then they realize this is a bit more difficult than I thought, then they start to kind of turn.
Right.
And sometimes, to be honest, we have folks that will get involved in this process. They start to turn, but then we also learn from them kind of where they were thinking, where they were coming from. And you kind of have that aha moment of, I see your perspective now. Can we now maybe turn the battleship a little bit and head slightly in the right direction for both our benefits?
Right.
And unfortunately for some of these large organizations that we have as a customer, they have to deal with this themselves, and then we have to deal with them coming to us as an ODM or a protocol organization. So we spend quite a bit of time just educating and finding out who that problem child may or may not be. Pull them into it and say, let's work through this.
Yeah, it's interesting from the standpoint when you think about the letting it run for a while, try it, they've come in with a different perspective. Because as innovators, we have to be careful to not jump to the conclusion that we're right.
Yep.
Therefore we're innovation leaders, and therefore people should align with us, and anybody who doesn't align with us is an antibody. There are times in everybody's career where you are also the antibody at some point. We use our experience, our expertise. We've always done it this way. This way has worked, for us on the last 5 projects. We're going to do it the same way on project number 6. And sometimes we've got to be self-reflective and say, something, maybe I'm not the solution. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I do need to try, something new and go about it a different way. And that is incredibly hard to do, to admit that maybe I still got to learn a few things, or at least be willing to take some risk in the process.
It is, and helping people come to that realization as well. As you coach them through it, I have learned a few things myself. As I get older, we get younger staff in that have some great ideas, things that they've done, and you kind of go, I did that 30 years ago. It didn't work then, but it does kind of work now. So we have to evolve ourselves.
Right, and that's the thing with any kind of an innovation leader is you've got to be willing to change. You've got to be willing to try new things. You've got to be willing to experiment, and that includes experimenting on yourself. Take a risk. Try something new. Try something different. So let's talk a little bit about trends. Obviously, we're obviously pretty heavily in the IoT world. But there's also a lot of other trends that are out there that are happening that are driving some of the work that we're doing. You talked a little bit about aging in place, and it's an area that you and I both have had many conversations on this. You used to live in Cincinnati with when you were at Kroger. I'm from Cincinnati. We're both Skyline guys, so we're safe.
Oh yes.
Neither one of us are gold stars, and if you're from Cincinnati, you know exactly what that means. When you're either a Skyline or a gold star. So John and I are both Skyline guys. But my grandmother lived in Norwood, right there in Cincinnati, and the challenges. And I would have loved to have had IoT devices. What do you think some of the trends outside that are driving some of the technologies like that, like aging in place, that are out there that you're seeing?
Well, a lot of it in the past it was all about the technology. Now the technology is enabling actual solutions or use cases, as so some will mention in the industry. Where I've seen things come is the smart home, the connected home. Security became a big deal, so cameras really took off. Now we're starting to see that, yes, aging in place is important. We have more and more folks that are, I think you mentioned it earlier, like an Airbnb. You're trying to manage one remote property or multiple properties. How do you do that without having to run around constantly in the car and change the lock, rekey it, change the light bulb, whatever? So now you can start to manage these systems without having to have a large management organization do that for you. It's all real time. It makes the customers a heck of a lot happier, and you can probably build a pretty good business case on that.
Yep.
From the aging in place, this is something that you and I talked about years ago, and it really hadn't kind of hit the mindset of folks because I don't think they had parents quite hit that age where they said, "Oh, I really would like to have knowledge about where is my mother? Did she get up out of bed today, or should I make a phone call? Can the cameras doing infrared only for privacy? Is there motion in the house? These kind of things." So that is really where I see things happening today. Tomorrow, you walk around CES and you see all of these cars. They're connected and they're blasting out real-time stuff, and so there's lots and lots and lots of cloud and data applications coming. Where I would really like to see things go is we've talked about connected cities and smart cities for long time. And none of that's really going to take hold until we get past a lot of the politics.
Yep.
And when I say politics, there's only probably a couple of countries out there that have made this happen. And these are pure top-down, mandated, whether it's China, Dubai, or wherever. You come to the U.S. or Europe, these politicians want to get reelected. All they care about is, will that solution get me reelected? Then you've got to deal with that local, county or state, and if you're not getting support, you're going to have all of these different mismatched solutions from city to city or burb to burb. So you're not going to get that connectivity that you need with your car. So you can just jump in it from the bar and get home at 2 o'clock in the morning. It takes you right there. You don't have to worry about it. But if you cross that county line, you're supposed to switch over the operating system or get out and get into another car. I mean, these are the kind of things that until those type of, the politicians get together, maybe I need to run some of those guys into a corner and get them pointed in the right direction. A lot of these technologies aren't going to work. And then we have to worry about the telcos. They come out every few years with a great new infrastructure. 5G is now probably faster than your hard line into your house. But their model is completely different from, say, the sensor business that I'm in. We want sensors that last 10, 15 years, low maintenance. Their model is, I'm going to come out with something new, faster, better. Every couple of years, you're going to buy a new $1,000 phone, and you're going to pay for the service every month. Completely different from what the sensors are. So how are we going to get these two ecosystems to work together so that the consumer goes, I'm willing to buy that, I'm willing to pay for that service, and what is the pain point dollar threshold that they'll actually do that?
Exactly. So, John, if people want to keep track with what you're up to, where's the best place to follow you at?
You can hit me on LinkedIn, just John E. Osborne II. I also have my site, the jeoii.com. You can find me on there. You can also just shoot me an email at oz@jeoii.com.
Yeah, we'll have all those links. And also, John is active over in the innovators community. So if you want to continue the conversation with John or I following this, hop on over. You can send us a message there. Community is free of charge, so feel free to hop on over and become part of the conversation on this and lots of other topics. Innovation tools seems to be the hot topic now over in the community. Everybody wants to know the latest tools. We just had a whole series of conversations on books, top books to read about. So check that out, theinnovators.community. We'll be right back after this quick break with another episode of 5 Minutes to New Ideas. You're listening to Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Back in the early days of this show, I would share what I called a killer question in each episode. These questions were designed to be used in your personal, team, or organization's innovation efforts. Now, based on feedback from listeners just like you, we've decided to bring it back with some improvements. Each episode of the Kill Innovations has a segment that I'm now calling 5 Minutes to New Ideas. It's designed for the creative mind looking for that next great idea. Each episode will challenge you to think differently about yourself, your business, and your products and services by asking unique, funny, and sometimes crazy questions. These questions are designed to force you to look beyond the obvious and to uncover ideas and opportunities you never before considered. So, get out your notebook and be ready to uncover that game-changing idea. Here is 5 Minutes to New Ideas. I really enjoy getting behind this microphone. It is my personal creative outlook that is separate from the day job. What was it that got me to start back in 2005? Like all things, I got inspired. My inspiration was when my mentor, Bob Davis, lent me my first self-help set of cassette tapes created by Earl Nightingale. If you are not familiar with Earl, he produced a spoken word record, yes, an LP, called The Strangest Secret, which sold more than 1 million copies, making it the first spoken word recording to achieve gold record status. And as we say, the rest was history. Those cassettes put me on a path of continuous learning in a format that made it easy to consume during my 1-hour commute in Chicago traffic. A few months later, after listening to that first cassette, Earl launched a monthly series he called Insight. A subscription was $70 a month, which was a lot of money for someone starting their first job in 1982. I signed up immediately. On those monthly cassettes, Earl challenged his subscribers to think, to reflect, to motivate, and to be willing to change. The content was what I needed to hear, and I've kept every single cassette and still have them here in my office. Years later, I was having a discussion with Bob Davis about how I could pay him back for the time he invested in me that led to my ultimate career successes. He laughed, and he said I could not pay him back, but that I needed to pay it forward. Find others who I could invest in. A challenge I wasn't quite sure how to deliver against. Then I got inspired. I thought back to Earl and how he impacted me and asked how I could do the same by sharing my experiences and lessons learned with others. When I looked around, there wasn't an easy way to produce something like what Earl did with Insight without great expense, so I put the idea on the back burner. Then I stumbled upon a small group experimenting with audio being distributed via RSS feeds over the internet, and the light bulb went off. I figured I could produce a recording and then distribute it using this new approach, so I jumped in. On March 5th, 2005, I produced the first episode of what we now call a podcast. I produced that first show using a crappy little microphone plugged into my laptop, sitting in the bathroom at the Marriott Resort in Arizona, and I loved it. Bob and Earl's inspiration in my life had come full circle. I had found a way to pay it forward. Now, I am nowhere near the impact of Earl Nightingale, but I'm trying my best, and creatively, it challenges me and keeps me learning. True inspiration goes deep. It changes us. It transforms us. What some people call inspiration isn't. Some things we may think is an inspiration isn't because of how brief of time we work at it. We give up way too early. What some call inspiration may be the new shiny object that we try and then figure out is not something we're that interested in. For me, that's photography. I have this long-standing love-hate relationship. I come back to photography repeatedly, but then just as quickly lose interest. Just ask my family. I have storage cards full of images that no one has ever seen. So what inspired Earl Nightingale? When he was 17 years old, he joined the United States Marine Corps. Earl was on the USS Arizona during the attack on Pearl Harbor and was one of 15 Marines aboard that survived. Following his close call in the war, Earl was inspired while reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, when he realized that the 6 words he read were the answer to the questions he had been looking for. What are those 6 words? We become what we think about. He realized that he'd been reading the same truth over and over again, from the New Testament to the works of Emerson. We become what we think about, or as the Bible say, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Those 6 words became the foundation of his career success, and later he was challenged to share that insight with others, and that's what led to his recording of The Strangest Secret. Earl went on to record more than 7,000 radio programs, 250 audio programs, as well as television and video. Now, Earl passed away in 1989, however, he is still inspiring others through his spoken word today. We all have a story about how someone or something has creatively inspired us. So what is your creative inspiration? Who has inspired you? How are you translating your creative inspiration into having an impact? Send me a note and share your creative inspiration story. I would love to hear it. I'm Phil McKinney, and thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join in. If you have any comments or suggestions, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. Beyond this show, I write about my personal experiences of being in the innovation game for the last 2 decades. Topics include innovation, creativity, culture, team building, metrics, frustrations, leadership, and how to win. You can find that content over at philmckinney.com. You can also find out information about my book, Beyond the Obvious, including extensive excerpts over at beyondtheobvious.com. You can find hardcover, digital, and audio versions of my book on Amazon or wherever you get your books from. If you want to be part of the conversation between the shows, I hang out in the Innovators community on Slack. The Innovators community is a private community of vetted innovators who help each other succeed. Check it out at theinnovators.community. This episode of Killer Innovations was produced by the Innovators Network. You can find the show notes and the entire show catalog going back to 2005 at killerinnovations.com. I'll talk to you next week, and in the meantime, go out and change the world with your killer innovation. Bye-bye.